Hello, everyone. My name is David Reed. Welcome back to Dial the Gate, the Stargate Oral History Project. I am privileged to have writer, producer, and director Peter DeLuise joining me for this episode. This is a live stream, so if you have questions for him, start submitting them in our chat on youtube.com/dialthegate. And be sure to check out dialthegate.com for all of our upcoming episodes. I've been really thankful with the number of folks who have been interested in expressing their stories for this season. And big thank you to Eagle SG, Matt Wilson, for that beautiful cargo ship pass that you guys just saw. He's been doing some amazing work for the intros this year. There are a few more spaceships to come. Peter DeLuise, writer, producer, director, Stargate. And one of easily, perhaps my favorite director from the show. I've been rewatching, Peter. Can you hear me?
I can, yes.
Okay. I've been rewatching the show lately for, believe it or not, the first time in like 5 years. And, you know, when your episodes come on, I just get warm and fuzzy now in a way that I didn't before. And I don't know if it's been from getting to know you better over this time or something about, I've been calling it like your whimsy. You have this kind of like, we're not taking this too seriously. We're going to have some fun. And I get that when I watch your episodes. I get that, you know, like you're playing this dance with the audience, you know, and maybe that's just me interpreting you. Maybe it's incorrect, but I get that process going on. Is that a fair assessment when you're filming?
That I'm full of whimsy and
Yeah.
that I'm trying to give you a warm and fuzzy feeling?
Yeah.
Yes. Well, it was just you though, but nobody else. I was just like, David, we better get a warm and fuzzy from this scene.
Oh God.
I designed it especially for that. So I'm not exactly clear on, is this when you know that I've directed the thing, or you see it and then you go, I wonder who? It's Peter. I recognize, because I have heard that some people recognize my style, that the whatever style that I've.
It's half and half. We start an episode and it's been long enough where it's been because I don't pay attention to the tiles when they fly by.
Right.
Where I'm going in and going, I think that this is a Peter episode based on how it's shot. You know, one of my favorite shots that you pulled off is your first episode, Serpent song, and the glider comes down, and you follow the camera backwards through the Stargate with Rick, and you see the wormhole, and then he pops through the SGC, and I'm still blown away by that shot. I mean, it looks like you hung the glider on like a stage wire to come down, and then it blasts at him as he goes back. It's one of the coolest shots from the show. And I see you in that, and I don't know why. I think that there are just certain things that's clearly Peter.
Sure, that's very generous of you to say that. I think that was described in painstaking detail in the script that you're talking about. Yeah, so that may be why that was shot in that way. And then things coming at you are always more interesting than going across the screen or away from you. So, you know, if you can ever do a stunt where it's coming at you, I highly recommend it.
Well, it makes
it gives David Reed a warm and fuzzy when it's coming at you.
Jeez. Well, it's, you know, it's I was interested to know or to hear that in some situations the script actually gives you direction with the camera.
Well, let's break this down, David.
Yeah.
So let's say you're reading a sequence where the Death Glider is coming down for a strafing run. The puddle's active, and O'Neill is the last one through, being the colonel, wants to make sure everyone else is safe. And he turns and he's like, yeah, I might as well get a few shots off before I go through the puddle anyway. I got the puddle right here. So I'm that close to being safe, technically, right? Except the next level of intrigue is, if he had thought it through, is if any of those death glider
plasma blasts
come through, then they'll just make a big old a Jackson Pollock all over the gate room. So we don't want to do that. yeah. So that was described that the Death Glider was, bearing down on him, and that he turned in a heroic way, as you would, if you're trying to make your hero more heroic, fire off a couple. I don't know what he thought he was going to do with was it an MP5 back
It
then?
was probably an MP5
P90
at the end.
point?
No, P90 came 2 seasons later.
Yeah. So here he is peppering off a few shots. I don't know why. I don't know if he had any. I don't know if that was going to be effective against a Death Glider, but you never know if you get a lucky shot.
And it feels good.
And then he falls. Yeah, and then he falls back through the thing, and of course, I'm sure that was Dan Shea doing the backward back plant off of it through the thing. So what do you do? How do you do it? Here comes the glider. What do we do now? Do we cut to something else, or right? How do you? And then also the other thing is, once you back through the puddle, you shouldn't be able to see the Death Glider anymore. So it's almost like you're a ghost. You're Patrick Swayze in Ghost, and you're backing through a wall, and suddenly you see the back of So as soon as you go through, you've lost sight of the Death Glider. So you have to all the good parts have to happen before you go through the event horizon, right?
Yeah, because if you're with O'Neill and he disintegrates in order to go to the other side, you want to make sure that you get just enough. So it's a cool shot. That's cool.
Well, I'm glad you liked it. You brought back a lot of memories for me, because that was very challenging trying to get up to speed. Here we are towards the end of second season, and everybody else has been given her, Andy Makita and Martin Wood, and the regular rotation of directors. So they all knew what they were doing, and I had to come in, and after watching all the episodes, I had to hopefully hit the ground running. Or in some cases, I guess there's a famous producer who from Brent Carl Claxton from Outer Limits used to say, we really got to do our best today. We really got to hit the wall running. He would mix his metaphors. He would hit the wall running. No, he was funny.
This whole process, this whole journey that I've been went on with so many of you over the course of the last 3.5 years now has just been exceptional. None the least of which was sitting down with your brother on stage at Gatecon in 2022. That is still one of my highlights, and I still can't thank you enough for doing that segment. That whole thing was just great. Even with Jeff Golka coming up on stage, that was just cool, man.
Jeff, the fact that Jeff was there, did he do other stuff? He must have, right?
Outside of Stargate? Oh, yeah. X-Files, whole bit.
I mean, I'd like to think that I don't mean that he...
Oh, at the convention?
I don't mean his career. I meant at the convention.
Yeah, he was a guest of mine. Partly because you were coming.
I didn't...
So, we've stayed in close touch ever since, and we're good friends, so...
Well, I've watched that. Well, thank you for saying that. And of course, my brother is always a good interview because he's full of joyful, wonderful, good cheer. And I was happy to join in that situation because I like spending time with David. When I saw that Jeff was or that you had done this, I rewatched that interview and I was like, I kind of wish I had spent a little bit more time with him, but I didn't quite know what was it. And I also realized in retrospect that you had planned for him to be the last person, but then it came to pass that he was the first.
He got excited. Yeah.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah. But it worked out that way because you had more time with him, because they rush us at the end. Let me tell you, they don't mess around at Gatecon. So it worked. All right. Yeah. This was great. You noticed.
Well, I was thrilled. I was thrilled to see him again because I had memories of him of that time, because that was very early on. That was only the second episode that I had done after Serpent Song, right? And the retool was a very challenging thing. And he was a kid, and it was sci-fi, and he was turning into a pumpkin, and all those things came back flooding my brain. And I was like, I remember this.
Well, you had some great episodes with some young people. I mean, Jeff Golka, Michael Welch, and I want to get into Michael a little bit later, but there's
good. Michael Welch was a highlight for me.
Absolutely. I think my moderator skipped it, but we're going to go back to the beginning here because you noticed it. Non-human said, Dagwood, body paint, and funny airbrush. So Dagwood was Peter's character from seaQuest, my favorite character from one of my favorite shows. I always wondered, Peter, if the makeup artist airbrushed a dong somewhere you couldn't see. So I wasn't going to bring this up, but Peter was like, let's check this out because he's got
Let's check this out.
The mock-up.
I have the mock-up. So this was created. This is a life cast created. Actors will tell you that when they get this done, it's a very it's an intense moment where you're incredibly vulnerable and you've got this all over your, alginate all over your head to get an imprint of your all the curves and all the dimensions. And they usually do a life cast right before they because they need the inside of the application. So if you were an old man makeup, you look like what you look like on this side, but then you have to look like that on the outside. And so they would take this, mold that, and then they would take the difference. They would create an outer mold of the whatever applications they want to put on your face, and then the difference between this mold and the new mold that they had would be the application that they would put that fits exactly to every contour on your face. But that's not why we did this cast. We did this life cast so every single line would be exactly the same every day, day in and day out, and nothing would have moved, and it would have been an exact continuity. And non-human, to answer your question about the dong, if there's a hidden dong, this seems very suspicious, but you can see it. It's not. It's not.
It's not immensely phallic.
It's not immensely phallic, but we checked. We checked the top. We got the top, and then the premise of this was that all the various skin tones that you can have, Caucasian, Asian, Afro, African, they were all modeled together to give what was essentially a camouflage, a natural camouflage. So you didn't have to put camouflage paint on your face to do that. And that was the conceit of the why they were all modeled like this. And then of course my character was bald because he was the prototype and they didn't quite get the hair right. And interesting side note, Will DeVry, who played Aldwin, was in Daggers. He played a Dagger as well.
201, that's right.
An incredible physique, and that's what they were looking for. And he was in Florida at the time, I think.
Yep.
And he ended up playing one of the Daggers on that show. And then we had a discussion about his career and what he should do. And I think because he was Canadian, I said, well, you should definitely get yourself up to Canada because they're doing a lot of stuff up there. And lucky enough, years later, when I became a director on Stargate, I saw his audition and I knew that he was a very talented actor. And I said, I think, if we're all going to get a vote, I vote for Will.
Well, you know that he can do the job,
Absolutely.
So yeah, it's a question of if this is the guy, if this is a guy who can do it, this is the guy who can do it. So absolutely.
He definitely understood the mission, and he was. I always thought he was quite good.
Absolutely.
And he served the show well, and I think that helped give him a little bit of a boost, gave him some operating capital so he could do his thing, right? He was a recurring Toker, right?
Yes, we had him in I think, what was his first episode? I think he was in season 3. Yeah, because he had some stuff with Teal'c in the cargo ship. Teal'c trapped him in the back. At least that was the devil So yeah, and then he broke his neck in season 5 when the Toker were being attacked on Ravana. So he
got blown up, right?
He sure did. Everyone, there was one of those springboard shots.
I don't think he was thrilled about that. No one's ever thrilled about being killed off a show, but he had a good run. If you were in 2 episodes, you're technically recurring, so that looks good on a resume, right?
Absolutely, it does for sure. When you were brought in to direct, how long was it before? And tell me how this works for when you're producing and directing at this point. By season 4, you were writing as well. Is that something where they came to you and said, "Hey, we want you to write for us. We know you're talented," or is it you who go to them and say, "I've got this idea"? You know, in that for SG1, what was kind of the impetus for you to start getting your hands in the writing pool?
Yeah. Now, I'm going to ask you a counter question before I answer your question. Do you already know the answer to this question, and you're just setting me up, or do you honestly not know how this came to pass?
I do not know, because I know that in certain circumstances, like if according to what Christopher Judge has told me, like for instance, if actors came on and they were like, yeah, I'd like to come back for more. Can we make this recurring? In some circumstances, Stargate Productions would say no, and we're not interested in having you now. So I don't know where the balance is.
I don't want to lose track of what the original thread is, but all actors. If actors had their choice, they'd always say, "I'd like to come back for another one," unless they're highly in demand and they didn't have a good experience on the show. So that isn't really the bar at which they go, "That person should come back." Okay. It's usually, "Hey, that character is really good," right?
Right.
Like in the case of Claudia Black, that was the situation where they were fighting with the MGM to get both the Farscape characters of Ben and Claudia Black on the show, and they said, "Can't have both of them." But then they saw how great she was, and they said, "Okay, bring her." But that's basically how it all goes down. So are you familiar with Falling Skies?
Yeah, with Colin Cunningham. I saw the first episode. That's the one with the alien invasion.
Yes. Okay. So that's post-apocalyptic. Life is cheap. A lot of characters are going to come on and get killed, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Ryan Robbins was on there as well, by the way. He had a great run on that show. So, and Hell on Wheels, and there's a ton of shows where the mandate is, we're going to kill a lot of characters off. We know this in advance, right? And some are going to be cherished characters, and some are not going to be cherished characters. So what they do is they write people to come in, and it's like an on-camera audition where they go, "Oh, that person's really good, and they got great chemistry," and maybe they last a little bit longer, right, before you kill them, right? Or they come in for 2 episodes, and they go, "Yeah, it's not really working out. I think we could do better," and that person gets killed, right? Those are shows, not like Stargate. Those are shows that are more hand to mouth, and what I mean by that is they're really just only 1 or 2 scripts ahead, whereas Stargate was arguably entire half seasons, if not entire seasons, where you knew that the arc of the entire season was going to go, right? So when you say an actor says, "Hey, I'd like to be on the show again," of course they would. Of course they would like to be on the show again and get the regular paycheck. But it isn't until you see they're doing on camera and then through dailies on screen that writers go, "Oh, that good. That works for me. That works for me." Another example of that would be, Brad and Robert and Paul and Joe and Damien and everybody watching the read through to get a feel for people so they can write to that, right? And that was a natural phenomenon. Eventually, it went away by the wayside where they didn't do script read throughs anymore because they had the voice of the characters in their head and everybody understood what was going on. But with Stargate Universe, get back to your other question about how I came on to be a writer. But with Stargate Universe, we had a gaggle, if that's the correct pronunciation. That's what for swans, a gaggle of scientists, right? And you had a whole bunch of characters who were just scientists, and they were basically interchangeable, and we didn't understand what their expertise was, and while we were down doing a lighting setup, several of the actors said, it feels weird because I'm like, what science am I good at? And I said, just make it up. Just be good at something, or create some chemistry with this other character so that the writers can see that, right? Bring something, right? And if the writers see this, they'll say, oh, that was an interesting exchange, because they can always cut it out. But oh, that was an interesting, let's go with that, right? And when David Hewlett would bring something and they go, oh, that's genius, let's include that, right? When the scientists on Stargate Universe started to be individualize themselves, and they would be petty with each other, or there would be some
the banter was great. Yes,
I know, right? Because there was an undeniable wealth of really, really talented actors there, and they just needed permission to just give her, right? And they didn't. I'm not saying make up a monologue or a soliloquy. I'm saying little idiosyncratic behavior that eventually the writers can pick up on, and they can write to that, right? Okay, now back to your other question about the writing thing. I asked, hat in hand, I asked Brad, I said, I had directed an episode called Demons. And Demons the premise was it was this medieval planet, and this Unas with a Goa'uld in its head would come and claim host bodies, human bodies,
for Sokar,
and then take them away. That's right. So I had also seen another episode called The First Ones, where the Unas was trapped in Thor's hammer. Was that what it's called?
That's correct.
Thor's
Like
hammer.
James Earl Jones. Yes,
I wrote The First Ones. But he referred to themselves as The First Ones, right? Yep. And so James Earl Jones voiced that character. The Unas with the Goa'uld in there was trapped in Thor's hammer and couldn't get out, right? And they had all those wonderful sound effects with those animalistic. The sound design was fantastic on that. So I watched that in anticipation of doing Demons, and then I thought, you know what's missing? The origin story for how the Unas came to be called The First Ones, right? Yeah. And so I pitched that idea, and I was incredibly enthusiastic about that to Brad. And Brad, I think, picked up on my enthusiasm, and he offered to mentor me, which I'm eternally grateful for. And I said, wouldn't it be great if we got to see go to the planet where the Unas didn't have the Goa'uld in them, and we got to see what they were like without a Goa'uld in their head? And he said, yeah, that sounds fascinating. And I said, what about like a Robinson Crusoe episode with Daniel, because he understands, he's the best linguistically with that, where he's in trouble and he's being championed by this Unas without a Goa'uld in his head, Robinson Crusoe style, and then it came up. Then I came as like, well, I'm going to have to invent the Unas language, and there's going to have to be some sort of cultural exploration about the Unas, their lifestyle and what they have. And I was very affected as a younger person by a movie called Walkabout. It's an Australian movie. It's a wonderful movie. I highly recommend it.
Okay.
And there is a through an unfortunate set of circumstances. I won't go too far up, but an unfortunate set of circumstances is there's a young lady and her little brother and her father drive out into the vast wilderness of the Australian outback, and the father is unwell. He's suicidal, and he commits suicide, and he burns the car and he commits suicide. And the woman and her little brother are suddenly trapped in the Australian outback. And lucky for them, this young teenage Aboriginal boy who's becoming a man is on Walkabout, and that's where the title is. And he helps preserve their lives and keep them alive, right? He's trying to become a man with his tribe, right? But he just accidentally comes upon this white girl and her little brother, and he saves their lives. And it's this very traumatic thing that I watched as a young person. I thought, wouldn't it be great if Chaka, named for Land of the Lost. I stole that name from Land of the Lost because that also affected me as a kid.
I did not know that. Okay.
Yeah, Chaka, baby.
Absolutely. Love Land of the
Dion
Lost.
Johnstone came in, and he was like, he was an incredible. His physicality was amazing.
God,
but I said,
good.
we're gonna have to learn everything we know about the Unas. Here's their language. Here's what they do. I told them about walkabout. I told them about, the fact that a Goa'uld, against your will, penetrate get into your brain. And since they live in the water, you definitely don't want to stick your head in the water to get anywhere near there. That's why you have to cup the water and keep an eye out for any, because they live in the water, right? Being parasites, that's how they would.
That's how they'll get you.
The people. So when Daniel goes to drink the water and he goes, "Hey, what are you, an idiot? What are you, a barbarian?" In his own language, you gotta cup the water. Only civilized. This is how civilized people do it, right? Yeah.
Yes, I've seen the cave drawings.
Yeah. and then we showed the Goa'uld launch in the air and do the thing. And I think Brad was as excited about the premise of the origin story with the Unas, and of course they were the first ones, which prompted the combination of Bill Jones's character saying, "We were the first ones. We were the first ones." And then the demon character claiming, "Oh, do you remember this scene? The demon comes!
The demon comes!" Who was that guy?
That was me. The combination of those things and the fact that the origin story I knew was going to, I just love origin stories. Who doesn't like a good origin story, right? Yeah.
Absolutely, it works. It's the origin. It's the origin of the primordial Goa'uld as much as the Unas. So, and I've got Chloe in my hallway downstairs. So, I'll show it to you at some time.
So that's the prop that they grab.
It's the we got the master or the mold of the Goa'uld fossil from the. It's cool. I'll send you a picture. So that's wild, man. That's a great
coming up with the sedimentary timeline and being all excited about what the implications of that were, and the primordial, like you said, the primordial Goa'uld.
That's wild. Well,
isn't it fun? Isn't that fun? So Brad, bless him for recognizing my enthusiasm. Said, "Yes, let's do that. You should write that down." And I mistook what he meant for writing a full draft. So I went right to draft. And I submitted, and he went, "Oh God, this kid needs a lot of help." Because, no, first you put a beat sheet down, and then we do an outline, and we undo it, and then you go, after several steps, then you go to a draft.
Well, you're enthusiastic,
I was. So. I wanted this to. I was excited about it.
So you wrote a full first draft.
Yeah. It was terrible. But
gotta start somewhere.
Well, it didn't have an outline, so it was just off the top of my head, right? But it had elements of what we were talking about, right? But it was even better when it became a two-hander between Michael Shanks and Dion Johnstone. Yeah.
Wow. One of my other favorites of yours is one where you had a story by credit on. And I think that I have a human aid to help me out with this one.
A human aid?
A human aid, yes. If I can get this.
It's better than the Gatorade.
Gatorade for sure.
Oh, my God. Oh, do we have a surprise guest? Hey, Michael. Look at him.
Can you hear me, Mike? We can't hear you. There we go.
A touch of it there.
One more time. Can you talk, Mike?
Hello.
There he is. Can you rotate your camera for me?
Oh, sure. This way?
That way. And it's not working.
Uh-oh.
But there we go.
How's this? Is this better?
It is Michael Welch, ladies and gentlemen, of Fragile Balance fame.
My goodness, long time no see, buddy.
Yeah, how have you been the last 20 years, Peter?
My erectile dysfunction has been handled. Thank you for asking. Yeah.
Oh my God.
That was a big concern.
It was a big concern of mine as well. You look like a grown-up now.
He is a grown-up.
Well,
thanks for pointing that out, David.
I tried cloning myself again to just keep going through high school, but I don't have the technology that the Asgard have, so I couldn't quite pull it off. So I got to just
man.
regularly.
I tell you what, that would have been a great spinoff. Watching O'Neill go through high school again. Holy crap! There's elements of big and sci-fi all into one, right?
This is one of my favorite episodes. Go ahead, Michael.
No. Well, I was just going to say, Peter, do you remember we spoke? Hi, by the way, good to see you. We spoke about, I don't know, a year or so later. You called me and had an idea for not a spinoff, but an additional episode. Where, and I forgive me, I don't remember the details, but it had to do with they needed Jack's brain power squared for some reason because of a super complicated mission. It was actually a really cool idea. Do you remember what that was? What that idea was that you guys were working on?
It was called You Ain't Jack, and I think it involved Mayborn.
Oh, You Ain't Jack. I see. I wish I could recollect what you're talking about. Today is 420. Just kidding. I don't celebrate. But I do not barely remember Jack, let alone that concept. So you're saying that they wanted to call about your availability, or why was I calling you?
I just remember like you guys were sort of ruminating about this idea, just bringing the character back as a one-off for a particular mission where they needed Jack's brain power
specifically.
Yeah. They needed his skill set for whatever reason. But anyway,
okay,
at the time though, I was.
Let me tell you what I think happened. Let me tell you
Mm-hmm.
what I think happened. I think that we were in the room spinning a story, and one of the ideas that came up was, well, there is a perfectly identical copy of Jack's brain in the form of Jack clone, and you were the actor who played Jack clone, and so rather than go down the road of investing in that story and then being vulnerable to the idea that maybe you weren't available, I think I may be filling in the blanks retroactively. If you were not available, then we would not have investigated that option. Were you available at the time?
I was on a TV show at the time. I very soon after that.
You inadvertently, through your success and talent, subverted our story by not being available. And you've got your own talent to thank for that.
Yeah, it's he was on Joan of Arcadia, I believe, at the time, and I was watching it with a number of other Stargate fans as well, and we were loving it. It was a good show.
Yeah, that was I watched that too, not realizing that you were on it, and I was like, he's really good, and he's not imitating anybody; he's just being himself. That's fantastic.
Peter, can you tell us about, and Michael, chime in, of course, about turning Michael into Rick in terms of mannerisms, in terms of, how do you dial that in? How did you guys make that happen?
I watched your interview, Michael, and you were very, very sweet to give me so much credit. But you to your credit, you were open and available and ready, and you were an incredible mimic. And you're right, you were brought up early. We had you watch the tapes. We wanted you to, tune in to his, be sensitive to his meter, because Richard Dean Anderson has a very specific meter in a very wry sense of humor in the way that he tells jokes. And did I ever tell you the 2-finger rule? I probably told you this, but you may have forgotten. There's a 2-finger rule, if Richard says more than two fingers, dialogue in the script, you got to cut. You got to break it up. He only does two fingers at a time, right? And those were witty couplets that he was able to get into, right? Oh, let me guess, magnets. That's only two fingers worth of space on the page, right? Okay, so you mercifully, you only had to do two fingers worth of stuff at a time because that's how he speaks, right? And so I think we watched it together. I think I talked to you about what the Asgard Greys were and the fact that they were disguised themselves as mythologically as the Norse mythology on the show. And you were, I imagine that's why I was so excited to, and I love the sound of my own voice, but that's why we sat so long and hung out and talked about that. And I think you talked about the thing, right? Which is something that Richard Dean Anderson would always do. If you were starting to babble scientifically, he'd be like, that's where magnets came from too. It's like, he would just say magnets as a catch-all for an explanation of anything that was scientific, right? Magnetic, he just go magnets. And I go, no, it's not. Next time it's not magnets. No. But when you went like this, that was exactly how he would handle. Please stop with the babbling and just speak regular English for the rest of us, the Philistines. And you did it perfectly. And when that happened, and I think Richard was excited about the idea of having to deal with you. Also, you're a very handsome man, and I can say that because I'm married, and nobody will suspect that there's anything untoward of that. But you kind of look like you could be Richard Dean Anderson at an earlier age. Although honestly, you're much more handsome than he was when he was that age. Do you know that he rode across the country on a bicycle?
I mean, no, but I would be surprised if he hadn't done that. I mean, that sounds exactly right.
Yeah. So he was an incredible athlete, a hockey player, but not a lot of people know this. He rode all the way across the country on a bicycle, and his taint started like this, and then it went. I got.
Jeez.
I'm sorry, Richard. People have to know. The wardrobe had to be made aware of it because the pants didn't fit right. I'm kidding. I take it all back. I'm trying to be silly. I'm trying to. This is the kind of humor that I would use to try to ingratiate myself to a young Michael Welch. But he's way beyond that. He sees through me.
No.
So when you came up and you said, I've been given several days early, right? So they had to put you up. They had to put you in front of a TV with a bunch of videotape that we were watching videotape back then, right?
Yep.
And we didn't have YouTube, as you pointed out. You were correct to keep the audience honest about what kind of research you had available to you. And honestly, you had none. You couldn't unless you were tuning into the program when it was your regularly scheduled program. You could not have known what he was like on the show. I mean. So when you came up and we started doing the gestures and I think even the sunglasses.
That's right.
We did the sunglasses. The thing with the sunglasses, Richard Dean Anderson would do this. He would come through with some not sunglasses, maybe not on because he was in the gate room, and this was just a production friendly thing. And then he would put them on and then go like this. And once he went through the gate and he was in the forested, the inevitable obligatory forested, and the sun was shining. He put the glasses on and he'd look around like this, and that was Richard Dean Anderson, that he didn't have glasses on in the last scene, but now he did have glasses on in this scene, and so you couldn't. It wasn't like he just went like that in the wide shot. It was guaranteeing a close-up, not that he needed a close-up, but he was saying, and now I have my glasses on for those of you who weren't paying attention. right? And I said to you, I think I said to you, when you put the glasses on, you just do that a little bit. Do you remember that little dumb thing? A character thing. It was just something that he did to help the audience transition to the fact that he was wearing glasses and they didn't just magically appear on his face from shot to shot.
No, I do. And this is why I believe you ultimately deserve more credit than I do. Not that this has to be a credit off, but it's like those moments, those details that were planted and infused by you, like that's what made that what it was. That's what made it's the level of detail that only an audience of Stargate would really understand and appreciate. And I think that's kind of what made it special and why people connected to it. And while I have you here, Peter, I'm personally just curious about something. I don't know if this is interesting to anyone else but me. But generally with TV, I mean, I believe how it works is, you sort of figure out, okay, these are going to kind of be our next 5 or 6 directors for these next episodes. I don't know that it's necessarily like, well, we need specifically this guy for this episode because his skill set matches for what we need, blah, blah, blah. I don't think TV generally works like that. But I'm just curious, when you guys were developing Fragile Balance, did you specifically say, no, I would like to take this one? Because again, you're right. As a resource, all I had available to me was those tapes and you, frankly. Or did it just happen to sort of align that way and you happen to, fall on the schedule that week?
If there was a discussion about who was going to take which episode, that was lost on me. I'd like to say that was the case, that I said I'd like to do that one. But David, you can check here. The time when Michael came on,
yeah,
I probably was doing 6, 7, 8 episodes that whole season. So it was just whatever was in the rotation. We had no say, right? And then sometimes I did overhear discussions where Brad would say, "Oh, that's good that this director is doing that episode," or "That's where they," and maybe that did work in our favor. And I'm so grateful that I did get to work on that show, because it did speak. Because I'm an actor myself, and because that's where I was coming from,
yeah.
I definitely had a sensitivity for that process and what was required there. And so I was thrilled that I got to direct that. I didn't ask for it because there was no asking. There was whatever was next is how it worked. And there was always a gigantic plan for, every set was built in mind for a particular episode, and then if it was going to be amortized or refurbished to fit the next episode, and those were planned months and months ahead of time back then. So I didn't have the luxury of being able to request that episode, but I was so grateful that I got to work on that particular episode, and then I got to work with you.
I mean, I couldn't. It's impossible for me to imagine having done that with anyone else, to be honest. Because I mean, again, I followed your lead. I trusted you completely, and I think we put together something pretty cool together, man. I mean, I gotta say, I've done 1 or 2 guest spots over the years, and I can't say that anyone has quite elicited the reaction that I've gotten from this one. I mean, all these years later too, to this day. So, yeah, pretty.
So you're still doing conventions then, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, less so, than I used to. But at this point, I'll just, I'll show up if I'm asked. But it's not a regular thing. But when I do, there's always a Stargate presence there for sure.
Oh, neat. Well, yeah, you did an awesome job. And the other thing that we're not talking about is you had a maturity beyond your years, and you can't just, whether you call it trust, when a young person or when a person's body betrays their wisdom, right? That's always very interesting, right? So when Drew Barrymore was in ET and she went, "Please," And she was just this tiny kid. Everyone went, "Oh my God, that's hilarious." There's this tiny person with an adult brain trapped in their body, right? Which is what you were doing, right? Your wisdom, your attitude, your boredom with seemingly the other grown-ups in the room was all part of the allure of why people, I think, like that show ultimately. And to have a teenager with pimples, that was good that you talked about that episode. Well, I got pimples. That's great. Let's embrace it. The fact that your experience was coming out from behind that youthful face, I think that was a huge part of the fun part. And you don't have to trust me on this. Freaky Friday and the movie Big, and there's a ton of movies. Switch. There's a whole bunch of movies where the person is, an adult brain is in a young person's body, and you go, "Oh, that's fantastic." Even the Butterfly Effect. Remember that? Mm-hmm. That was a crazy movie where he jumped into his younger body. Right? I love that. I thought that was very clever. Yeah, it's just cool, and it takes a unique talent to pull that off. So I don't want you to I appreciate the gratitude and the validation that you're giving me. Of course, I need it as I get older and more gray. I need all the validation I can get. But your contribution is not to be undersold. You were an amazing person in the right place at the right time, and we were so lucky to have you.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, sir. And David, thank you for bringing me on. The one thing I will say. My only concern about the pimples at the time was just continuity. That's all. And in retrospect, you know what we should have done? Every time there was a new scene with a new pimple, I should have looked in.
There you go. Perfect.
To indicate to the audience that I know there's a new pimple. Listen, I mean, I don't know if this was this is your life surprise guest you were expecting, but I am thrilled to see you again, man.
Oh, dude, you made my day. I'm loving it.
We were up on stage in Vancouver a year and a half ago, and we brought you up, Michael, after I had brought out another surprise guest, and we brought you up in the conversation, and Peter turned to me and he said, "He's not here, is he?" And I was thinking to myself, I bet I could make that happen next time. So thank you for helping me surprise him.
Yeah, that was a good. Thank you too. That was very sweet.
Thank
you for putting this time aside on your Saturday to surprise me. I appreciate that.
Oh yeah, anytime, guys. Well, thank you. I appreciate it. I don't want to eat up more of your time. You got a whole other series to talk about beyond my little episode, but thank you again. It's wonderful to see you, and I don't know, it's great, good stuff.
Thank you, Mike. You're the best, man. Be well.
All right, thank you. Appreciate you.
Cheers.
All right.
Bye now. He is so cool. He is just absolutely one of my favorites from this entire show. The amount of
He's
stuff.
All right. He's all right.
And he's still listening to us talk about this. Later, buddy.
Oh, hey. All right.
Bye. I'm leaving.
But no, seriously, the talent, the talent that you cultivate on this show, is amazing.
Well, I didn't cultivate it. It brought. Wife says I just have to take compliments appropriately. I did have an opportunity. It was a great challenge, and it definitely was one of the highlights of being on that show is that quirky moment in the show where that really needed to work. Otherwise, the whole episode was going to fall on its face.
Yeah, because Rick is pulling back in terms of his availability, so you have to come up with creative ways to pull that off. So Rick is not there to kind of guide him around in the mannerisms that we need. So
that was a great way of getting around his availability. And I think you did a whole episode or a whole thing about him not being always available to us and having to come up with days.
200. That's a part of the theme from 200. It's like, how do we organize him disappearing all the time? That was funny, man.
So there was another way, which was to naturally split the team. That I heard Brad White say that more than a few times is how do we split the team? Rob as well. So when you were spinning the episode, you would say, that invariably the SG-1, the foursome would come through, and then they'd split off. And one, maybe O'Neill goes this way and the other way, or two of them would go this way and two of them would go that way. And then that would be half as many scenes on the other planet that required Richard Dean Anderson to be in there, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So I remember Orpheus, you had him on the hill in a sniper position for the episode.
Yeah.
And Teal could go in and do the business with getting his son and Braytek back. So you make it work.
Yeah, that was exactly one of the reasons why we did that.
For sure.
I think my cameo on that one was when I had him scream, "Hanson Penhall."
That's it.
Fire, or get over it.
That's it exactly. Absolutely.
He didn't question it at all. He was like, "Yeah, okay."
My dad wants to know, Peter, if you...
Sorry, hold it. Wait, I just had a memory.
Yeah.
I said to him, the line was "fire at will." Like it was time to start shooting.
Yeah.
For all the people up there. And he said, the line said "fire at will." And he goes, "I don't want to say fire at will." I think he said "have at her, boys," or something like that. But I was like, "You don't want to say fire at will?" And he said, "No." So one day we'll find out why he doesn't want. Maybe he thought it meant it was don't fire at Will Waring. Will Waring's an excellent director, and where would we won't be able to hide any more pineapples on the show if Will Waring shot. But no, he said, "I don't want to say fire at will," and I was like, "Okay, I wonder what that's about." Yeah, but I didn't question that either. I didn't question why he didn't want to say. I don't want to say. Maybe it's just a clunky line. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of a clunky thing to say in the heat of battle. Fire at will.
Well, that's also an example of. I mean, you have your lead actor who's also an executive producer on the show. I would imagine he had a little bit more flexibility with the script than.
Well, he had an innate sense of what was cool and what wasn't cool. And quick sideline story. I came into the office and I was watching. Invariably, they would watch dailies during lunch, and I was prepping my own episode. And I walked in the writers' room, and they were over sandwiches. They were watching the dailies, and all of them had. All of the team, SG-1 team, had shooting glasses on. Do you remember that when they were wearing the yellow shooting glasses to protect their eyes?
Yeah, that's enemies 501. They're running down the hall from the replicators because it's close quarters. You're shooting bullets everywhere.
Yeah, they were shooting bullets everywhere, and it was for the safety of the actors. And I'm pretty sure that was why the primary force behind that was. And my immediate reaction was, that looks silly. Looks ridiculous. And they said, "Well, it's not silly." Everyone in the room said it's not silly because it was a decision that I wasn't part of at all, because I had been shooting. And by the time I came down to prep and I started watching the show, suddenly I saw these shooting glasses that had never been on the show before. And I said, they look silly. They don't look cool. And they said, "That's what they wear in real life." They don't look cool. That's real. And I said, "You know how I know it's not cool? Richard Dean Anderson isn't wearing them. That's how I know they're not cool." Yeah, and then you cut to Richard Dean Anderson. He's the only one not wearing those silly glasses, right?
Okay, makes a lot. I mean, yeah, he's the man. So yeah. Absolutely.
Well, listen, I'm not saying that it's silly to protect your actor's eyes, but what I'm saying is, it's suddenly there's this thing. And for me, it didn't have a very good reason. It wasn't a good reason to suddenly put glasses on, But they were going to be shooting an enormous amount of ammunition in close quarters, which is exactly why you should protect the actor's eyes, right?
Yep, absolutely. Vizing wanted to know, what is your favorite film, and who is your favorite director? Someone wants to know a little bit more about your influence. Could you narrow that down?
What is my favorite film? What is with the show? And what's your favorite? What's the most? What's the least? Everybody's with the favorite all the time. I'll give you I'll tell you what, I really liked. Nobody ever remembers this movie. It was based on a play. It's called Inherit the Wind. It's an amazing play slash movie that was Spencer Tracy is in it, and it's about the Scopes monkey trial when Scopes, a teacher, dared to teach Darwinism. He dared to teach. It was the turn of the century. Clarence Darrow was the I believe the lawyer doing, and he what was under discussion, or the law that had been broken, was there was a school that was teaching
evolution.
Evolution, thank you, and that was a problem in the Bible Belt of I believe Mississippi,
Tennessee,
and was it Tennessee?
Tennessee, in violation of the Butler Act.
Oh, you know it better than I do.
No, Google does, but thank you.
Oh, Google, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for helping me out with that. So it's just a really, really powerful drama about a real life thing that actually happened, and because it was a play, they had worked a lot of the kinks out and made it very effective, and which is I think an excellent way to polish off a story is by seeing its effect. And Neil Simon used to do that. He would take a play, and they go very far away from New York, and then they'd slowly do the play more. And Neil Simon would watch and see which jokes landed and which jokes lied, and which story
Sure.
and eventually they'd make it to Broadway. And by that time he had revisited the all the laughs and all the things, so that it was every syllable was within an inch of its life was perfect, right? And then it was ready to be put on Broadway. Mm-hmm. So a play is a natural for a movie because it's been done over and over, and you can see if it worked back in the old days. Nowadays, movies are written by people who watched other movies, right? They didn't read a bunch of classic books. So I really love that movie. Almost nobody really knows about it, but visually, I'll give you a handful of favorite movies. There was Saving Private Ryan, Shawshank Redemption, Blade Runner is a visual extravaganza. Yeah. I love that movie. Thelma and Louise is a tour de force in an amazing socially relevant movie. I know not a lot of men say Thelma and Louise is one of their favorite movies, but it's a very powerful, very important movie that got made at a time where a lot of movies didn't have female leads, female heroine. Well, all if you're a heroine, then you're a movie, and you're a female leads. And it was a really well done movie, and I remember watching it thinking, that guy is a cliche, and that male character is a cliche, and that male character is a cliche, and then I realized, oh my God, almost every movie I watch, the female character is a cliche of a female character. You've got the whiny wife, or the doubting mother, or the tiny wedges that we allot for the female characters back then, and now you've got whole movies being made about the female experience in present day society, and I'm like, bring it on! I can't wait to see that. I love that stuff.
There's some good stuff coming out all the time.
I hope that answers the question. My favorite changes based on my needs and how I feel emotionally. But I really enjoyed that. Recently, not that you asked, but recently I binged watched the series Fallout. Highly recommended. It's awesome.
I've seen the first episode. I was very impressed. Because video game adaptations are tricky, and lately we've been getting a couple of really good ones. So
yeah, well, the production design alone is amazing, and the execution, the acting, the directing, it's
absolutely. Can I ask a quick question about window of opportunity?
yeah.
I
Didn't
know
we cover
we've
that?
covered it. We've
That
covered it
last
a
time?
little bit
Yeah,
more, but
sure.
when it came up
Okay.
short, that the episode was short. Was there any? How much was there involved in getting all of those individual shots shot of the collage at the end, the montage? Because my understanding was that takes up a lot of time to do each of those individual
Yeah.
shots. What
Montages.
kind of creative freedom did you have on that?
Well, it was all hands on deck situation. Once it became clear. So what we talked about last time was, my recollection was, and I haven't revisited this in a while. My recollection was to not do a time loop or a Groundhog Day thing without a montage. It's not even worth. You shouldn't even attempt to do a time loop episode without a montage, because people getting better at stuff is always going to be cool. And I've told you in part one when you asked me this before, the fact that the Chris Judge and Richard Dean Anderson could both juggle was invented out of whole cloth right there. I asked them, "Can you juggle? Can you juggle?" Yes. Okay. Pretend that both your characters don't know how to juggle, and then we'll just go one after another. Practice, getting better, and that was absolutely right in the moment. Trying to fill some space and going, well, why wouldn't you learn how to juggle if you had all the time in the world, right? And then there were other things. I think I told you about Brad Wright doing the golf swing thing.
Yep.
They were all golfers. They loved golf back then. In fact, I was only one of the only writers who didn't do golf. I would have been more excited about golf if it was speed, full contact speed golf. I would have been excited. But I don't care for golf very much.
That's fair.
Yeah. If we had played pickup football or something like that, I would have been totally into it. But they all, and Robert and Paul were inevitably practicing their putt while we were spinning stories. I think it helped them concentrate.
Absolutely.
So once it became obvious that we were not going to be short, everyone took an interest in, wouldn't it be funny if this happened, right?
Okay.
So I can't remember if throwing a pot of clay for Richard Dean Anderson, I can't remember if that was originally in a script or if that was invented afterward to fill time. I know the Vern one with riding the bicycle, that felt like that was invented out of whole cloth. I know the golf one was invented after the fact. I know that the juggling was invented after the fact.
I guess getting hit in the door was thing, yes.
Getting hit in the door, that was feel that Joe and Paul cleverly put in was how do you come back every time back from the loop? How do you start every episode? Because we had already shown the Fruit Loops, which Joe cleverly pointed out, because it loops. It's got the word loops in it. And then they wanted to swap out Cheerios because they couldn't get, and they said, it doesn't work. Cheerios, there's nothing. It's a circle, but it's not the word
Fruit
loops.
Loops is perfect.
Yeah. The fact that Chris Judge or Teal'c was being bonked in the head at the beginning of every time, and he goes, "Oh, I'm sorry," and so you have said every single time, and he slammed the door back at him. That was, to their credit, they wrote that beautiful joke of the reveal of how Teal'c's character has to endure this punk every time at the beginning of his redo. And there's a milestone for that. The Sonny and Cher music from Groundhog Day.
Oh, absolutely! At the beginning, every time it resets, I've got you, babe.
The Sonny and Cher music, and he's like, oh, again. So there had to be that moment where you knew. And the reason, I think I told you this before, the reason we were so under time was most of the time when you start a scene, people come in the door, they knock on the door, they say, "Hey, can I talk to you for a second?" Blah blah blah. And there's the slang for that is the gazinta and the gazata. So you come in, you gaz into the room, and then you gaz out of the room when you're done talking. Well, none of that had any use in the show anymore, because we would just cut to the next time. Everybody had to come in the room again. In the first act, everybody came in the room and said their thing, right?
So your setups were far fewer,
right? And then in the first act, and I had to say, "And now we're putting the light in your eye. What could possibly be in my eye that would justify all this?" Right? Yeah. And then it was just the next scene was just cut to the light POV shining in the guy's face again, right? You didn't need the picking it up and putting it into, or tell me more. So all that caused the scene to get cut down. We cut the episode down and down and down and down, and I was like, "Oh, what do we do?" So to answer your question, I don't know exactly how much. I know there was some montage, because it's unthinkable that you would do a time loop episode without a montage, but we had to fill in way more montage, and it was fun. Fun thing that everybody got super excited about. How do we fill this time, and what else would they? What other silly hijinks would they get up to if they had all the time?
Just crazy people in a crazy situation, man. And it's I think I remember someone saying we were it may have been you. You guys were it was an out week or whatever it is that you say, like you're not feeling like completely into it, like everything is firing on all cylinders. But sometimes you just don't know, what's gonna grab a fandom for years later.
Yeah. I tell you what, because Brad is such a tactician in the way that he would tell stories, if you really look closely at all the ways Rob and Brad and Joe and Paul and everybody, and Damien, of course, every single scene has a point. Every single scene exists for a reason, right? And so I think I have a theory. I'm gonna pitch it to you. You tell me what you think. I think if each scene has a story point, right? And it wasn't that, oh, we'll just have a scene to develop character and that'll be fine, right? Because it wouldn't forward the story, and so it would get cut. It was unnecessary. We need to forward the story all the time, right? So even if it was a huge action sequence, Brad would say, "It's just moves. They're just moving from this place to the other. It just moves. It doesn't count as a story point, right?" Okay, so you get to the point in a show where every single scene is a story point, is a line on an outline that says, and then this happens because we need to feed this, and then this happens because of that, and then this happens because of that. They're all laddered onto each other. But now you're suddenly in an episode where the story point is they investigate what it is to have all the time in the world. Now you've got multiple scenes that only still feed into one story point. What would you do if you had all the time in the world, right? And so that felt different, inherently felt differently, because now you've got not one scene, one story point. You've got many scenes and still the one story point, which is the one. And it did serve a purpose. So they learned Latin, and they educated themselves in the sciences, and which I guess they promptly forgot after the episode, right?
Well, according to the first Stargate SG-1 novel, Trial by Fire, O'Neill remembered it years later and was able to speak it fluently. So some fans interpreted it differently.
That worked out. That worked out well. But he didn't use it on the show.
No, absolutely not.
Yeah. So I think that's my theory. When you had multiple scenes that were seemingly frivolous and all playing to the point of what would you do if you had all the time in the world, right? I think that's why it stuck out, because it wasn't, each individual scene wasn't in fact forwarding the story.
Absolutely.
The 1-to-1 ratio of forwarding the story.
Can I ask you about one more episode before I let you go?
You're gonna let me go?
Well, I just want to be conscious of your time, so I don't want to put you in a situation.
I live for this, David.
Oh.
I was gonna say whoever has to pee first loses.
I don't want to put you in a situation where it's like, hello, The Warrior. I love this episode.
Oh, you have a question about The Warrior. Oh,
well,
cool.
I want to know your process for this episode, because this was a story by, let me double check and make sure that I have my P's and Q's correct. This was a teleplay with Christopher Judge, and an amazing guest performance in terms of Rick Worthy. The episode would live or die by this actor.
Yeah.
Tell me about casting Kitano. Imhotep.
Yeah. He was just so handsome and so present, and he had that speaking voice like melted butter toast. And so Katana was Katana and Imhotep, right?
Kitano and Imhotep, yep.
So Katana was his false identity.
Yep.
That's what he was putting forward. And I thought, and it's not a mistake that Katana is, the word for sword,
yep.
right? As I often borrowed old words that I knew that were historically very old. I think mastaba means house in Egyptian. That was the martial art. I was like, oh, that just sounds good, and it's, maybe that's how over a millennia the word mastaba went from being of a special martial arts to it's a house. It's the foundation of our lives, sort of thing. And I thought, wouldn't that be interesting if you use the word and its meaning slowly shifted into house, right? Yeah. And so that's why I used the word mastaba, because I thought it sounded good. I knew it was Egyptian. And anyway, Rick Worthy. He's an American. I think he put himself on tape back in the old days when that was a little bit more rare. Now it's the standard, putting yourself on tape. And he was just an amazing actor. He later did.
He's done everything.
It would just take too long. Anyway, he was just super right for it. He was physical. He needed to be super physical. He needed to be, and this was the other thing. He had to be incredibly charismatic, right?
Yep.
You had to, without even thinking about it, you had to go, oh, of course they're all drawn to him. He's amazing. Yeah. What an amazing leader. What a charismatic leader. Yeah.
And be able to have...
He just got it. He just understood.
The martial arts expertise as well. I mean, he could do a lot of those moves himself.
Yes. It was... So, this is the other thing is, capoeira, I adopted... That was something that I recruited. There was the martial arts, capoeira martial artists practicing near where I live, and I would see them playing. They call it playing, doing their capoeira, and I stopped them near my gym where I used to work out, and I stopped them and I said, I want to talk to you guys about capoeira and your class and all your guys. And one of the fellas who I talked to ended up becoming a stuntman. Actually, they were the two guys in Orpheus who were doing the amazing martial arts stuff during the melee.
Yes,
and they were those two fellas, and I think one of them ended up dating and marrying Rachel Luttrell.
Okay. So
okay. Isn't that a weird connection?
Everyone connects.
I would say,
Lloyd Bateman.
Thank you. Lloyd Bateman was one of the fellas in there, and they were doing capoeira, and Lloyd became a very prolific stunt guy. He did motorcycle, not just martial arts, but motorcycles and all sorts of wonderful stuff. So I said, I want to adapt this because I think it's stylistically, it's very unique, and I'm excited about it. And I had this camera rig called the Revolver Shot that I wanted to use on the show as well, that Ray Douglas, I pitched him the idea of this camera apparatus that would create bullet time from the Matrix, but in the camera, right? Spinning the camera around really, really fast and shooting slow motion, so that we could do these really sort of majestic fight scenes with the capoeira. So I needed a unique, really sexy martial arts and a unique way of showing that martial arts. And so it was a fun little marriage there that came together.
It's just wild how you guys were able to pull that off, and the reveal at the end. It's like, oh, this is right. Just another Goa'uld playing another form of game with us,
playing another game and getting all the and that also, I think that was the one where we had the Jaffa's name with the scarred.
Yes, Raknor. Yeah. Oh, is Obi.
Yes, Obi. He was an amazing talent. So I think I made that up, that they cut his off, right? And
yes.
It was all scarred.
Yeah, that was for the serpent's venom.
Yeah. I thought that was a fun way to deal with that character. Wouldn't that be cool if it was all just cut off because he didn't want to be identified as one or another?
His father had, in the story that you wrote for the Serpent's Venom, his father had gone to him and told him, because of what Teal'c had done, that they were free. And then his father ended up dead. And then he decided to join Harrower's forces in capturing Teal'c, which is one of my favorite episodes of the show, Serpent's Venom, where you spend... the actor who was torturing him has recently passed. He's no longer with us. But that was Tarok, Paul Koslow. We see Chris Judge.
Tarek's named because he creates terror. It's that simple. His name came from. He's terrifying. He's terrifying. He's terrorizing all these people. Yeah.
I love that episode, not just for those scenes with Raknor and Teal'c and the grueling experience that Christopher Judge must have gone through being tortured, but the cleverness of the disarming the explosive, and probably one of my single favorite scenes from the entire show when Jack makes a comment about all of Daniel's luggage, and Daniel says, well, I couldn't find this particular language in archaeology.com, and Jack takes his fingers and pokes his glasses back on his nose. I mean, that is what makes Stargate, the relationship between the characters that is unspoken.
Yeah. I love that stuff too. I'm glad you're pointing that out. All that stuff that you'd never expect to see in a ultra serious situation. I mean, people are. I think human beings invariably look for the fun part, or just to relieve stress, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, people laugh at funerals. That's mm-hmm. not uncommon to hear people laughing about a fond memory they had of this deceased or something, mm-hmm. or there, because it's also because it's forbidden. You're not supposed to laugh.
Right.
It makes it even more funny because you're not supposed to laugh. Right?
Well,
there's that funny.
Yeah.
There's that Mary Tyler Moore thing where they're talking about the clown that has died and she can't stop laughing. It's one of the most funny episodes ever. Yeah, where they're eulogizing the clown and she can't, and she just loses her mind because she can't stop laughing.
It's.
Why did I say all that? Oh,
yeah.
Why did you ask me about Rick Worthy? What was the? Did you
Because
want me to come up with a better story than
no,
the
it's,
audition
I
that
mean,
we all
I
thought he
just
was great?
Rick, I have gotten to know him since that episode, and you're right, that booming voice. I cannot say that this will be easy. As an orator, just so powerful, and how the whole episode just hangs on his every ounce of charisma. It's just brilliant. He's brilliant in that show.
Yeah, yeah. I felt excited about that, and of course, you have to use that the special flowery language that Jaffa definitely would be talking to each other, right? So during his opening speech, I remember trying to come up with what would you say if you're trying to get a bunch of Jaffa on board with you, right? You know, would that sound that makes sense? Because Jaffa are pretty smart because they're most of them are over 100 years old, right? So they've been around for a long time, so they're not easily fooled by empty rhetoric, right? So that you would have to say something that actually makes sense to them, and that they could get. You have to be empathetic to their plight to get them to come on board with what you're saying.
They're not stupid, and they've been tossed around an awful lot by all of these, false gods. So
yeah,
it's wild. Before I let you go, Tubby Guts wanted to know, Peter, have you heard anything about a new Stargate series? I just wanted to check in and to ask about that.
Yeah, I know that there's quite a frenzy, and it has been a frenzy about what's going to happen with the show. And I know that there is definitely there's an audience for it.
Yep.
And I take the short answer is I don't know.
Okay.
And the only people that do know are probably not at liberty to say. Like Brad Wright, Robert Cooper, Joe Malazzi, they would have way better insight than I would. Brad Wright, of course, being at the top of the pyramid in that regard. I will tell you, I'm just gonna. So that's my factual answer. My emotional answer is I know that there's a market for it. I know that there's an audience for it, and so that gives me hope. Because if you can't trust the creative aspects of why you should make a show, there's always the financial, right? So there's money to be made, and I know that if MGM and not MGM, now that they've been bought by Amazon, that I know that if there's money to be made, there will be some iteration of Stargate eventually, right? Because you just have to trust the almighty dollar in this regard, right? So if there's enough of an audience, see another version of Stargate, and I take great hope in that. I give a lot of clout to that, and I know that Brad has come incredibly close, and the timing has. And I'm just like you. I want to know if that's going to happen too, because I know that there's an audience for it. And when I see, how many YouTube episodes have you seen about why the superhero, the
fatigue,
the fatigue of superhero stuff is palatable? I mean, how many $100 million plus movies can you make that people are not excited about anymore? Before you go, oh, maybe another genre. Maybe we should investigate another genre. I don't think it's an accident that there are so many post-apocalyptic movies coming out right now, right? Series and so forth. I don't think it's an accident that when the vampire genre came out, everybody had to have a vampire movie, right? And so these things ebb and flow. So when you get a superhero thing, you get superhero fatigue. We gotta show, how about something else for a while? There's a sitcom fatigue. Let's do our drama. When everybody went on strike, they said, well, now let's do unscripted. Let's do reality television, right? Yeah. So there's an ebb and flow to everything, right? Yeah. And so I know that eventually, and by the way, Stargate, the sequel that you get, might not even be called Stargate. Yeah. This might blow your mind, or you might know this already. Remember Independence Day 4? Independence Day?
Independence Day.
Do you remember the movie?
Of course, absolutely.
Just ID. It was called ID4.
Yeah.
Independence Day, right? Okay. That was the original. That script was meant to be the sequel to the original movie Stargate. Did you know that?
I didn't know that the script was supposed to be, but I knew that they wanted to do another Stargate. So
yeah. So this is what happened. You take all the names of all the different things and just erase them and just put. So Independence Day was the aliens' reaction to what happened in Stargate.
Mm-hmm. They come to get us, just like Apophis does at the end of season 1.
They come to get us, right? Yeah. And all the various countries of the world band together to fight. Instead of pointing their guns at each other, they point them at where? At the aliens. we all come together, right? To
common enemy.
To fight our common enemy. It's a great theme. It's a fantastic theme, right? And imagine how mad Roland Emmerich and Dean Devlin were when they gave their franchise away and said, "We're going to make this something." And they said, "Well, we still got this great idea for a movie."
They had a trilogy.
We'll just call it something else. We'll call it Independence Day instead of Stargate, right?
Makes a lot of sense. I never thought of it that way. Yeah. So it's one way or another. The good ideas have a way of coming out of the top, through to the top. So
yeah.
So Peter, thank you. This was really cool.
David, before we sign off, I want to thank you too for being the person who has created the historical document that is Dial the Gate. You take it. Wait, do you know what I borrowed that from? The historical document.
The historical documents.
SeaQuest. Historical documents. Yes. So you have created Dial the Gate, the historical document documenting the journey that is Stargate, and I think all the people that love Stargate have come to understand that you have very respectfully and your passion and your how do I put your not just your passion but your stamina to do this on a never-ending basis until every single detail is eked out. I admire that. I think that's amazing.
Well, you guys.
So if I didn't say it before, I'm eternally grateful for all the. When I watch this, when I watch you talk to people, I go, I didn't know that. I was there and I didn't know that. Yeah, I'm constantly finding out stuff about the show that I didn't know. Yeah.
Well, it's a testament to the work that all of you made that there is an audience for this. I mean, we got 160 people watching. There's something that continues to click after all these years. And I told this to Dean Devlin, who had reason to be frustrated with Stargate SG-1 going in its own direction. I told him, I said, something is working. You can't do that many, you can't do 350 some odd hours of a show without saying to yourself, something is going right. And the people that you guys all brought together that started at the top with Brad and Jonathan and Rick and Michael Greenberg and all the way down, making it a place where everyone wanted to be and look forward to being every single day, and not be a place where it was like, oh gosh, I can't stand to be here one more second, because it's not worth it. If that's the case, then it's no good. You're doing something was done right. It came through the storytelling, it came through what was filmed and the editing, and the fans have continued to suck it up. So I am eternally grateful to all of you for continuing to share so much of your time with us to continue to preserve these memories for all fans, whether they've found the show or have yet to find the show. So thank you.
Cool. I hear you, man.
All righty, sir. I appreciate your time and all the best, and look forward to talking with you again one day.
Okay, David. Appreciate your time. There's a big kiss for you.
Mwah. Thanks, brother. You take care of yourself.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Good too.
That is Peter DeLuise, writer, producer, and director, Stargate. I've been watching. I've been privileged to watch the show with Nicole and Evie on Wormhole Extremists, Dial the Gate's sister channel. And it's amazing you can rewatch a series that you saw when you were, 14 years old and just a little kid, and you continue to see new things that you never saw before. And it's one of the advantages of watching it with friends who also love the work, because they can say, oh, look at that, there's a van driving by on this moon, But it's continually rewarding to go back and watch. So my tremendous thanks to Peter and to Michael Welch for coming on and surprising him. So I reached out to Michael about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and I said, I'm getting Peter DeLuise. Would you like to? He said, yes, absolutely. So that's awesome. If you enjoy Stargate and you want to see more content like this on YouTube, please click that like button. It really makes a difference with YouTube and will continue to help the show grow its audience. Please also consider sharing this video with a Stargate friend. And if you want to get notified about future episodes, click the subscribe icon. And giving the bell icon a click will notify you the moment a new video drops, and you'll get my notifications of any last-minute guest changes. And clips from this live stream will be released over the course of the next few days on both the Dial the Gate and GateWorld.net YouTube channels. My tremendous thanks to my moderators, Summer, Tracy, Anthony, Jeremy, Marcia Middleton. Welcome to the Moderator Club. I really appreciate you being sticking around. A lot of the questions that were submitted for this episode were answered in the first episode from Peter. So go into our catalog and look for the first hour with Peter, and a lot of those questions will be answered. My tremendous thanks to Frederick Marcoux at Concepts Web. He makes dialthegate.com continue to purr like a kitten, and Matt Wilson, Eagle SG, for the amazing the amazing title sequences that he's creating for us with some of the classic ships. That's all I've got for you. We have Corin Nemec tomorrow at 10 a.m. Pacific time. He's going to be here to share more memories of Jonas Quinn and Stargate, and to talk about his new book, which is out now. My name is David Reed for Dial the Gate. I appreciate you tuning in, and I'll see you on the other side.